getting the celebration you deserve. Welcome to the Hopefulist with me, Wendy McClure. A Hopefulist is the woman who takes control of her life to feel vibrant, alive, and passionate. I help uncover the limiting beliefs that have held women back for so long so you can step into your true, authentic self and live the life that is truly meant for you. Because you matter. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you tuning in so that we can start to change the conversation around the way things are in this country. We want to talk about how everything is skewed from a patriarchal advantage because that is who made all the rules up until now. So what we want to do is dissect things and to look at them as they really are instead of what we've always been told and therefore always believed. Now, I will say this. When we start to dissect these things, it does seem a little crazy at first. It seems like a lot of what is actually happening seems ridiculous, but hang in there and stick with me, and we will prove that this is a patriarchal society, and this is the way things have been run to benefit men in this country, mostly this world, but especially right now in this country. I also wanted to wish everyone a happy belated Mother's Day. I hope that you had a wonderful day, that you were celebrated and honored and put up on that pedestal that you deserve for being a mother, the creator of life. What more important job could there be in this world? So I wanted to say the quote of the day today is about mothers. The seeds of success in every nation on earth are best planted in women and children. And what that means is that we really need to honor and realize the importance of women and children in our nation. I saw a video recently where there was a guy that was talking about how women literally make babies and grow them. They grow them in their belly, sometimes with very harsh health repercussions. And yet we still can't get paid the same amount of money for the same job. And it seems a little ridiculous when you put it that way, right? Because this is the way things have always been. That's why it's time to change the conversation. I wanted to talk about something else that I saw online. It was a mother, new mother, her child's maybe 1 or 2 years old, talking about how she and her sister, also a mother, are coming together to celebrate their mother on Mother's Day. She said that she was making a dish, her sister was making a dish, and they would meet at their mom's house where the mom would make the main dish. And she just wanted to know and was really, truly wondering how this is celebrating mothers, how this is a day that is for her, because she's still having to cook. She's still having to have her mother cook when she doesn't necessarily want that to be the case. So where are the men in this situation? She said that her husband is away right now. Her stepfather has some issue. He's injured. I don't know what it was. But as she pointed out, if I were my stepfather, I would make sure to make arrangements to make that day special for my wife. If she were her husband that was away, she would have made sure she was not away to make sure that he got the day that he deserved. And it was really very sad because she started to cry in the middle of it because she just thought it was so unfair that on Mother's Day, these three mothers had to come together to celebrate each other, and none of the men in their lives were there to help celebrate. They didn't do anything even toward the celebration. And unfortunately, this is the case in so many instances. And, she's not even bashing her husband. This is what happens when we grow up in a patriarchy, because the men have always been given the idea that they don't have to. They don't have to go overboard. They can put other things above this, that there are things that are more important than helping your wife, the mother of your children, celebrate her on that day. Now, I do have to say that I was at the grocery store yesterday, and there were a ton of people getting cards, flowers, gifts. I was very warmed to see that. I was happy to see that. But we have to remember that women deserve this one day at the very least. And I've seen the TV shows where the dad's in the kitchen helping the kids make breakfast for mom, and he's burning everything and everything's terrible. And then the mom has to come down and clean up the mess after having a burnt, horrible breakfast. So these are some of the things that we've had to deal with forever. And I just think that we need to tell the men in our lives that this is something that is important, that this is something that we need because we have a need to feel special to those in our lives. And if you can't even take the time to reschedule a work trip or make a reservation at a restaurant, then you are not making your wife feel special. And that's the other issue. Some people go out to eat. Who makes the reservation? Who is the one calling and saying there's going to be a party of 5 on Sunday for brunch at 11 a.m.? Is it the husband? Sometimes it is. Most of the time, it is the woman making her own arrangements for her own celebration. And we just think this is normal. We just think that this is the way that things are. And you're right. This is the way things have always been. And that's why it's important to point them out and try to make changes to make lives better for women and young girls growing up so that the next couple of generations can start to break out of these molds of this way that it has always been done. There is a better way to do it, and I don't really think it is asking that much for a man or a spouse to be the one to arrange everything for one day a year that will truly show the woman in his life how much she means to him. And I don't want to hear that it's not your mother. You are the mother of her children. That should be even more important. Well, all right, let's not get into that. But, my husband, who I love dearly, he is a wonderful, thoughtful, sweet, generous person. But early in our marriage, he would always get me a little something for Mother's Day from the dog, because I don't have children. We don't have children of our own. So I must have said something to him last year and said, you don't have to worry about it. It's not a big deal. So first of all, the question I have is, why did I feel the need to do that? Why did I feel the need to tell him not to bother? Just buying a simple card for me? Why did I think that that was just too much trouble? Because we're always worried about everybody else. We don't want to be a burden on people. And honestly, it's not that big of a deal to me. But it's really not that hard for him to have gone out to the dollar store and picked up a card. And I am almost positive that I didn't say anything about Mother's Day this year. But when I jokingly brought up, "Oh, thank you, Tucker, for the card. That was so sweet," he goes, "You told me you didn't want anything." Again, love my husband. He's the greatest. He's super evolved when it comes to men, but he falls into the patriarchal system just as much as the next guy. And it's because we don't know any better. It's because this is the way that it has always been. And that's what we're trying to break apart at this time. I did date a guy once when I was younger who every Valentine's Day, they got all of the women in the family together. And then they got the men and boys of the family together, where the boys waited on the girls and had a Valentine's Day tea for them. Now, the mother made everything. So let's keep that in mind, that she still had to make, but it was like this 7-course thing. You know, there was scones, there was muffins, there was, I don't even remember now. It's been so long, but it was very sweet. And I just thought that was the greatest thing ever because it's something that I had never seen. And honestly, it's something that I have not seen since. And even with that, that was just the one day a year. You know, it's like, okay, these are things that should be happening on an ongoing basis. There is nothing wrong with wanting to be treated as if you are special. Now, what makes this even harder is the fact that you have to have a conversation with your spouse that you don't necessarily want to have in order to address these issues. Because what happens when you bring something like this up? It's an uncomfortable conversation. They immediately become on the defensive and they try to defend their actions. And right away, you become this person who is accusing them of things. So it is a difficult conversation, and it's something that I would urge you to think long and hard about before approaching the topic. And one of the things you really need to stay away from is the word you. You don't do this. You only think of yourself. Things like that. The way to approach it is to say, I would really love it if you would make all of the arrangements for something that you know that I would really like. And just let me have that whole day where I didn't have to do anything. Or I would really appreciate it if you just made me feel really special by taking control and doing everything that has to do with the day. And you have to do this in a way that it's not going to come off as accusatory and that he's not going to get, where he feels like he needs to defend himself. But this is a conversation that you have to brace yourself for. And only you know your spouse in the way that you do. And there's sometimes when this is brought up that they are going to take it in the worst way possible. And then it turns into this big thing and you just don't even want to go there. And I get that because often what I hear is then they become angry and then they're mad. And then you have to then get to their place where they are now in a horrible mood, and you have to regulate their mood in order for you and anybody else in the family to now enjoy that day, because now you have to manage them, because now they're pissed off. So now the day is going to be ruined for everyone if you can't manage to get them to feel better about what you just said. So it's a mess. I know. I get it. It is a mess. And what it ends up doing is reinforces that belief that you have, that limiting belief that your needs are too much, that you don't matter, that something that you want is too much trouble for everybody else. And that's not true. It's just not true. So the other thing that I wanted to point out that's related to this is, how often do you think about your spouse and your children throughout the day? This is another thing that women often just get the shaft on, where, how often do you just pick something up because you see it in a store, because you know that your spouse would enjoy that or your kids would enjoy that? How often is that returned? How often does your spouse come home and say, oh, guess what just popped up in the stores? And my husband does do that occasionally when it comes to seasonal things. I enjoy Cadbury eggs. He typically gets me the first Cadbury egg of the season that he sees. I also like a particular seasonal dessert from Tasty Cakes. When he sees that, he will pick that up for me. I also know that is not normally the case. And if it is, that's great. Congratulations. But the fact that you are constantly thinking about the people in your family means that you should have somebody thinking about you at some point during the day. It doesn't have to be every day, but maybe Mother's Day could be a day where everybody thinks about you. But there are so many cases where mothers are still the ones that are orchestrating Mother's Day. And I know it's a difficult conversation, but my tip is to have this conversation long before the event. Do not make it the day before or, for heaven's sake, for the day of, because then it gets into, like I said, if they get angry, then you have to manage their mood, tell them that it's okay, and you just basically, fold. You just go back on everything that you had just said. So have a conversation about how, when you're left in charge of the celebration, you feel like you don't matter to your spouse and to your family, and that you need to feel special at times. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that they need to step up and do a little bit of a not better job, because that's, antagonizing, but, just say that you want them to take the reins, to plan something that I will love, and I don't have to lift a finger that has anything to do with that. Step lightly. Be very cautious when you have this conversation, because even the best of men with the best intentions can take it the wrong way. I brought something up to my husband the other day, and again, my husband is a victim of the patriarchy himself. He is a man, and he was brought up to think that, men do certain things and women do certain things. And I have followed along with that for the most part when it comes to our marriage. And it works for us most of the time. I do most of the cleaning. I do the laundry. I wash the sheets. He helps me at times. I'm not saying that he doesn't ever do any of it, but it's not very often that he will just step up and do something on his own. He waits until he sees me cleaning before he says, is there something I can do to help? And this is not bashing my husband. I think that my husband is leaps and bounds above most husbands that I see. But even he, when we were having a discussion about how my dog needs a refill on her allergy medication, I said to him, okay, I will order that on Monday. And I'm like, why am I always the one that has to do everything for the dog? I'm just wondering, like, why is it? Well, you're just better at that stuff. I mean, you know what's going on. You know what, you know how to do it. I said, I know how to make a phone call, because that's all it is. It's all it is me making a phone call to the vet to say, hi, I'm Tucker's mommy, and I need you to refill this medication. That's all it is. But we are in those gender roles. And like I said, I'm not, trying to be derogatory against my husband. I think my husband is amazing and I love him to death. This is all a result of the way that we were both brought up in this society. There are certain things that the women do, and there are certain things that the men do, and there are certain things that the men won't do. But now the women do a lot of the things that the women didn't have to do back in the olden days, if you want to put it that way. So in order to get your needs met, you have to have this difficult conversation at some point, because it is not asking too much to be made to feel special. It is not asking too much to have your needs met. And if this person loves you, I would think that they would want to do that. But part of the problem is we live in a society where once we learn what the bare minimum is to get by, we tend to just do the bare minimum. The average person is just going to continue to do that bare minimum. There are people that go above and beyond, and those are fantastic people. But generally, people are going to do just what they need to do because it's easier that way. So have a conversation and remind them of some of the things they did when you were, just dating, when you first got married, and say, I miss that. Can you do stuff like that again for me? I think that it would be really great for me and how I feel in this relationship, in this family, about myself. And just make sure you go into this conversation with understanding and make sure it's not accusatory in any way. And oftentimes what I hear is that things will change for a little while and then inevitably they go back to the way that they were. Tell them that this is something that you want. And if they fall off the wagon, tell them again. And keep letting them know that you need to be made to feel special occasionally by the people that claim to love you. And if that is something that is too much for them to handle, and they continually do not show up in the way that you ask them to and hope that they will, then that's something that you have to consider from that point on. You have to go forward with the knowledge that you can have that difficult conversation again, and you might get one or two things, and then it's just going to start to drop off once again. So it's at that point where you have to start making some decisions about how you want the rest of your life to go. But don't ever be made to think that your needs are too much because you want to be celebrated on a day that is set aside to celebrate you. And if you are making all the arrangements and making the food and the dinner, that is not making you feel special. So I hope all of you actually did have a wonderful Mother's Day, and that all of these scenarios that I just described were not the experience that you had, although we know that it does happen. So it's time to put on those big girl pants and start making the changes in our life to live the life that we truly want to live. So I want to thank you again for joining me today. If any of this resonated with you, please share it with a friend. If you have not given a rating or a review for the podcast, please do so. It really helps with getting the word out there to others who may enjoy this podcast. And check out my website whenever you get a chance. It is hopefulist.com. So thank you once again for being here. I hope that you enjoyed listening to the program. Yes, I'm going into my very fancy mode. So go on out there now and be badass this week. I'm here cheering you on. Thank you for listening to The Hopefulist. Please visit my website at hopefulist.com. And always remember, you matter.